All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations unto the Akim at her pushing his gospel, truth and sincerity to the best of their ability given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. This is Brother Quanah Watts from the Arizona Great Millstone Camp. Come back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. You know, and the title of this lesson is The American Economy and the American Dream Are Going Down the Drain. You know, and I have this, I have a couple articles, which the first, both of them actually being, on the AmericanFirstReport.com. It's like, it's like it. And the first one saying right here, it says, rising costs squeeze American wallets as job market signals alarm for Fed, and, I was reading the article, that earlier today that said that, in August, right, only 22,000 jobs, right, were ultimately added to the economy, right, and that inflation, right, is roughly at, across the board is at roughly at 4.1%, which is more than double, what the Fed ultimately, is trying to, achieve, right, that 2%, inflation, right, across the board, right, just as a general, it's still at like 4.1%, right, which is huge, right, and it continues to go up, right, as we're going to read in this article, it continues to go up, right. It says fresh data from the Labor Department shows inflation picking up steam in August, just as the Federal Reserve grapples with a cooling labor market, right, and mounting calls for interest rate relief. The Consumer Price Index climbed 0.4% for the month, a step up from July's 0.2% gain, pushing the annual figure to 2.9%. And again, I think that number is, from what I was reading earlier, that number is at, more like 4%, 4.1%. Give me one sec. Salakia. Had to, do a couple things, but yeah, man, right? So basically, right, you got a, overall inflation about 4.4%, 4.1%, right, which is, again, drastically hindering, right, the average American people, right, especially with the Trump putting, tariffs on, these 90 plus countries, which is adding, about $2,100 to $2,400, as far as, what they have, the average, household has to pay for, just everyday goods, man, and it's putting that strain on people, right? Putting a whole bunch of strain on these people, man, and this is why you see a lot of these different videos of people, basically damn near crashing out, man, because they can't pay for certain things, right? Or prices are going up, It says that these numbers landed right on, it's like, we'll jump to the next one. It says the timing couldn't be worse for families already feeling the pinch at the grocery store and rent check, right? With a rate cut widely anticipated, the first since the hiking cycle began, these hotter than recent inflation readings stir worries about stagflation, that unwelcome mix of climbing prices and sputtering growth, which is not just stagflation, right? You got a, shrinkflation, right? They're putting less in a bag of chips, right? than it was, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, where a bag of chips, right, that cost, $2.50, right, had about 4 ounces of chips in it, now, it's like, I actually seen it, on a little small bag of chips, right? It was $2.69, so it's up a little bit, right? But the ounce in the bag is now, it's in 2 ounce and 5/8, right? So they're drastically cutting, how much is in the bag, so it's less than half the bag. You know what I mean? Which is shrinkflation, right? The price is going up, but the amount is going down, right? How much you're getting is going down, which is jacking up these people, man. These people are about to crash the hell out, which is, again, right, going back to Job 20, in 22, where it says what, right? that every hand of the wicked shall come upon him, meaning these people are going to crash out and they're going to ultimately rise up against their government, right? Which we're seeing happen in France, Nepal, right? Based on, again, Nepal is, based on a social media ban, but over in, but it's also for corruption of the government, right? As well as in France, right? Corruption of the government, you know? It says the job market suddenly chill has policymakers leaning toward easing, even if it means tolerating some price pressures for now. Meaning they're ultimately going to try to cut those interest rates or whatnot. But see, that's not going to work, right? It's going to continue to, the economy is still going to continue to decline, right? Let's jump to this real quick. This is Jeremiah 50 and verse 7. It says Babylon had been a golden cup in the Lord Yahweh by Hashem Yahushua's hand, right? Because America at one point, right, which America to a certain degree is still on top, right? America is still that, that number one nation, right? Economically, right? We're just seeing its decline, It says that made all the earth drunken, right? So America has ultimately pushed out that, philosophy, that Roman lifestyle, if you will, right, out to the rest of these nations, and they've drunk up that wine. Right, you had people at certain times, right, ultimately look at America like America had golden streets. America was on top. But now we're seeing that decline, and a lot of people are starting to realize that America and the American economy and the American dream is going down the drain. Even those who live here in America, right, even these average Americans are starting to realize that, man. Which is, ultimately brings me to my next article, but I'm going to bring this out first. It says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her take balm for her pain, if so she may be healed, right? Which there's no way that you can ultimately heal, America, from the state that it's in now. There's no way, even if you do the interest rate cuts or, just like the former, the Reserve Secretary, Janet Yellen or something like that, the former before Jay Powell, she was ultimately saying, hey, we got to cut, Social Security, we got to cut certain, government facilities and whatnot, cut funding for certain facilities and whatnot. And guess what? That didn't help the economy at all. It actually made it worse. So there's no band-aid that you can put on the American economy, right? That's ultimately going to heal it, right? Verse 9, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go everyone into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. And you're seeing a lot of, people starting to leave, America, right? You got even celebrities, right, saying that, that the lifestyle overseas is a lot more tolerable, right? It's more calm, right? It's not so fast paced and competitive and this and the third and just jacked up. Right, that they're leaving America, man. Right, to go to these different countries, man. Right, there's an exodus, right, of America taking place, man. And again, right, as I stated, right, you even got average Americans, right, the average Americans, not just celebrities or whatnot, that have the funds to be able to move to these different countries, but you have the average American looking at it like, damn, there's really no, there is no American dream anymore. Like most people aren't even, worried about going to college now. Like college has no, bearing on, being successful or making any kind of good money. They're saying screw it at this point, man. Which again, and this is just, flowing in the spirit. I just kind of, seen these articles, and was like, damn, again, the American economy, right, is going down, right, which ultimately fuels, right, the American dream. When the American economy is doing good, hey, that American dream is within reach, right? But as we see the American economy draining, right, or going down, right, we're seeing that American dream go right down with it, So this brings me to, again, right here, it says Americans are waking up to the real cost of college, right? It says when families sit down to map out a young person's future, the conversation often circles back to one big question. Is 4 years at a university still the golden ticket it once seemed? Right? Because again, right, America, had this, it pushed this lifestyle. You need to go to college. You need to, do this, you do that, right, in order to have some type of good life, right? That, that white house, white picket fence, golden retriever, right? But see, again, that's not it no more, man. You know, that's not it no more. It says fresh data from Gallup suggests the answer is leaning toward no, right? With public faith in higher education sinking to levels that would have seemed unthinkable a decade ago, right? People were saying, hey, you need to go to college, you need to get the education, you know, in order to be successful. But again, see, that's not true, right? It says the latest survey conducted in August with over 1,000 adults paints a stark picture. Just 35% of residents called a college degree very important, a plunge from 75% back in 2010, right? 15 years ago, right? That's the lowest mark in Gallup's tracking history. And for the first time, fewer than half of Americans see it as essential. Another 40% labeled it fairly important, while a striking 24% dismissed it outright as not too important. More than double the 13% who felt that way in 2013. So these numbers are drastically increasing. It says among college graduates themselves, the numbers barely budge. Only 40% of their own path. Only 40% rate their own path as very important, with 12% shrugging it off as not too relevant, right? So here you go, right? They're looking at a college, right, and all that as something that is, again, right, you guys are reading, right, not too relevant, right, not too important, right? Basically saying fuck it, at the end of the day, man. Because again, as you're seeing prices go up, even a college degree, right? Some people have a college degree and they go into that same field that they had that college degree in, and they're still not making enough money, man. And this is why you see a lot of these people turn into, content creators, or, trying to, make money off of social media, because again, right, that the average, way of, trying to live, right, that, is skyrocketing, it's too much, man. Which again, right, is as you see the American economy going down, the American dream goes down with it, But that's all I want to read on those two articles, man. I want to grab one more preset, man, and we'll get out of here. This is Isaiah. What is that? Right here. It says Isaiah 24, verse 8. It says, the mirth of tabrets ceaseth, the noise of them that rejoice endeth, the joy of the harp ceaseth, right? Because as we're seeing the American economy go down, right? The American dream going with it, and with that joy, that mirth, that comfortability is going right along with it as well, right? It says they shall not drink wine with a song. They shall, it says, strong drink shall be bitter to them that drink it. The city of confusion is broken down, which is talking about America, right? Babylon, right? The root word of Babylon being Babel, meaning confusion, right? And this is the place of confusion, right? America is the place of confusion. This is the city of confusion is broken down. Every house is shut up that no man come in. There's a cry for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone, man. Right? So that American dream, right? That shit's gone. The American economy is going down, and the American dream is going down right along with it, But that's all I got. You know what I mean? I just want to, ultimately hit a quick lesson, man, through the Spirit. Lord will. It was edifying, Lord will. Straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh. By Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem, Kwakadash, Barakadah. Until next time, it's Shalom.